I should have known something was wrong when Nathan insisted on hosting the quarterly staff meeting at our care facility this year. He never showed much interest in these gatherings before, always finding excuses about medical equipment sales conferences or client meetings that conveniently conflicted with our facility's events. But there he was, arranging the catering and even checking the presentation equipment himself. My name is Evelyn Turner, and this is the story of how my husband's betrayal became his ultimate downfall. The day started perfectly, almost too perfectly. Morning sunlight streamed through the large windows of our facility's conference room, highlighting the elaborate spread of breakfast pastries and coffee on the side table. Staff members arrived gradually, carrying their folders and tablets, many offering warm greetings. My sister Madison came early to help, her lawyer's instincts already on high alert as she watched Nathan flutter around the room with unusual enthusiasm. "Something's off with him," she whispered, helping me arrange the meeting materials. "He's never this involved in facility matters." I nodded, my stomach churning with familiar anxiety. "I know." The first sign of trouble came when my cousin Olivia arrived. She wore a fitted dress that seemed inappropriate for a healthcare facility meeting, her smile a touch too bright as she air-kissed my cheeks. "Evelyn, darling, the facility looks amazing as always," she gushed, but her eyes were already scanning the room for someone else. I watched as Nathan's face lit up when he saw her, a micro-expression that would have been imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent 10 years memorizing every detail of their spouse's face. My father Harrison, the retired hospital administrator, was in the middle of his usual speech about the importance of quality patient care when Nathan clinked his glass, standing up with that smug smile I'd grown to hate over the past few months. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice carrying across our suddenly silent conference room. 20 pairs of eyes turned to him, including mine. "I believe in transparency, and it's time for me to be transparent with everyone here." My hands grew cold around my water glass. I knew what was coming, had known it was coming for months, but that didn't make it any easier. "Olivia and I are in love," he declared, reaching for her hand across the table. "We've been seeing each other for the past year, and we've decided to be together openly. Evelyn and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was deafening. The soft hum of medical equipment from the nearby patient wing seemed amplified in the stillness. I could feel everyone's eyes shift from Nathan to me, waiting for the breakdown, the screaming, the tears. My mother Eleanor, still carrying herself with the composure of a former head nurse, half rose from her chair, ready to comfort me. Instead, I took a slow sip of water and set the glass down carefully, just as I'd learned to do during countless difficult family meetings with patients. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice steady with the same professional calm I used when handling facility crises. Nathan's triumphant smile faltered. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. "Evelyn," he started, his tone condescending as if explaining a complicated medical procedure to a child, "I know this must be shocking." "Not really," I interrupted, standing up and straightening my blazer with the precision I'd learned during my nursing years. "Though I am curious about one thing, Olivia. Did he promise you a position on the facilities board? Because that might be a bit complicated now." Olivia's perfectly manicured hand tightened around Nathan's. "What do you mean?" I smiled, reaching for my phone with the same methodical movement I used when checking patient charts. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. But please, don't let me stop you two from celebrating your grand announcement. I'm sure you have patients to attend to." "Evelyn," my father started, his face red with the same anger I'd seen when he dealt with negligent hospital staff, but I held up my hand. "It's fine, Dad, really." I turned to address the stunned room full of healthcare professionals. "I apologize to everyone for this unexpected entertainment. Please enjoy the breakfast." I need some air. As I walked out onto our facility's terrace overlooking the healing garden, I heard chairs scraping and voices rising. Madison followed me out, wrapping an arm around my shoulders with the protective instinct of both a sister and a lawyer. "You knew," she said. It wasn't a question. "For months," I confirmed, pulling out my phone and sending a quick text to Daniel, my lawyer. "And I've been preparing." "Preparing for what?" she asked, just as my phone buzzed with Daniel's response. I showed her the message, "All documentation is ready. Operation Patient Safety is go." "Evelyn," Madison breathed, "what have you done?" I could hear Nathan inside, his voice raised as he tried to maintain control of the situation that was rapidly spiraling away from his carefully orchestrated plan. Through the window, I watched as Olivia touched his arm possessively, her nurse's ID badge glinting in the morning light. "What have I done?" I echoed, a smile playing at my lips. "I've simply made sure that patient safety has an excellent lawyer, big sister. And trust me, what's coming is going to be one hell of a diagnosis." The look of confusion on Madison's face slowly transformed into understanding, then admiration. Behind us, the facility chaos continued to unfold, but for the first time in months, I felt the same calm that had carried me through countless medical emergencies. Nathan thought he was destroying my world today. He had no idea he just walked right into mine. The morning after the facility meeting disaster, I sat in Daniel's office, watching him sort through the stack of documents I'd been collecting for months. The files were filled with financial records, patient care reports, and internal audits. My friend Rachel perched on the leather armchair beside me, scrolling through messages from staff members still reeling from yesterday's events. 37 texts asking if you're okay, Rachel announced, shaking her head, and one very nasty one from Olivia calling you an ice queen. Should I respond to any of these? "No need," I replied, focusing on Daniel as he pulled out a particular file. "Let them talk." Daniel adjusted his glasses, spreading papers across his mahogany desk. The morning light caught the framed medical malpractice certifications on his wall. "Everything's in order, Evelyn." The timing couldn't be better, actually. Nathan signed the last transfer documents 3 days ago, thinking they were routine facility paperwork. "Show me again," I said, leaning forward. He pointed to Nathan's signature, bold and careless, at the bottom of each page. "These give you controlling interest in all 3 care facilities." He was so busy planning his grand announcement that he didn't even read what he was signing. The memory of how I discovered the affair flooded back. 6 months ago, I'd noticed Nathan's sudden interest in his phone during our facility board meetings, the way he'd angle it away from me while texting. One night, he'd left his laptop open in his home office, and a message from Olivia popped up, "Can't wait until she's out of the picture. Everything will be ours, including the new medical equipment contracts." "Evelyn?" Rachel's voice pulled me back to the present, her data analyst's eyes scanning my face with concern. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, straightening my spine with the same composure I'd maintained through years of difficult patient consultations. Just remembering the day I decided enough was enough. Daniel gathered the papers into a neat pile, organized with the precision of a seasoned medical malpractice attorney. "Well, your preparation paid off. The care facilities are essentially yours now. Nathan's shares in the main company are worth practically nothing without controlling interest in the subsidiary facilities." My phone buzzed. Madison calling. I put her on speaker. "Sis, you need to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "Nathan just tried to access the facility accounts. He's at the bank right now, throwing a fit because his codes don't work anymore." I checked my watch, the same one I'd worn through countless night shifts as a nurse. Right on schedule. Did he try calling the IT department? Oh yes, Madison laughed. They told him they could only take instructions from the majority shareholder and certified healthcare administrator. Rachel clapped her hands in delight. Oh, this is better than those medical dramas. I love it. Gets better, Madison continued. Olivia is with him, and apparently she's not taking the news well. Something about promises he made about their future in medical equipment sales. Daniel held up another document, this one bearing the state medical board's seal. Speaking of futures, we should discuss the ethics violation reports. The irony is beautiful. His own negligence in reviewing the documents protects your position completely. He can't touch anything you've acquired independently during the marriage, including the healthcare facilities I've quietly taken control of, I finished, allowing myself a small smile, the kind I used to give patients when delivering good news. The office door opened, and Daniel's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Reed is on line 1. He sounds upset. Daniel looked at me questioningly. I nodded, feeling the same steadiness I'd relied on during emergency situations. He pressed the speaker button. Nathan's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled rage. Daniel, what the hell is going on? I need access to the facility accounts restored immediately. I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Nathan, Daniel replied with the calm demeanor of an experienced medical malpractice attorney. I represent the majority shareholders' interests now. What are you talking about? I own those facilities. Actually, you don't, I spoke up, using my most professional administrator voice. Not anymore. There was a moment of stunned silence, the kind that falls in a hospital room before critical news is delivered. Evelyn, you're there? What have you done? Nothing you wouldn't have done, I said, keeping my voice level with years of practice in delivering difficult news. Just protecting patient care standards and facility integrity. You taught me that, remember? Always be one step ahead in healthcare management. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. I'll fight this. With what money? I interrupted. The personal accounts are frozen pending our divorce settlement, and the facility accounts, well, you know how that's going. Olivia's voice came through in the background, shrill with the panic I'd heard from nurses during code blues. You said everything was taken care of. You promised me those equipment contracts. I'll call you back, Nathan snapped, and the line went dead. Rachel slow clapped. That was magnificent. It's not over, Daniel warned, his expression serious like a doctor preparing to deliver a difficult diagnosis. He'll try to fight this. Let him, I said, standing up and smoothing my professional attire. Everything was done legally. He signed every document voluntarily. His ego made him careless. He never thought I'd be capable of outmaneuvering him, just like he never bothered to understand the complexities of running a care facility. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. Your father's furious about the scandal, but I'm proud of you. As a former nurse, I know you're doing what's best for patient care. Come to dinner tonight. Going to face the family? Madison asked, still on speaker. I gathered my purse, feeling lighter than I had in months. Yes. It's time they understood that the quiet, agreeable Evelyn they knew is gone. Sometimes patient advocacy needs a little help, and I'm more than happy to be its assistant. As I left Daniel's office, I could almost hear the sound of Nathan's carefully constructed world crumbling around him, like the beeping of a failing vital signs monitor. It was music to my ears. My mother's house smelled like garlic and childhood memories as I walked through the front door. She was stress cooking again, a trait I'd inherited from her, just like my dedication to patient care. The kitchen counter was already crowded with 3 different pasta dishes. Mama? I called out, Are you feeding an entire hospital staff? She turned, wooden spoon in hand, marinara sauce dotting her retired nurse's apron. Evelyn, come taste this sauce. Does it need more basil? Before I could answer, my father's voice boomed from his study, carrying the authority of his years as a hospital administrator. Is that her? Evelyn, in here now. Here we go, I muttered, squeezing my mother's hand as I passed. Dad sat behind his massive desk, looking every bit the healthcare executive he'd been for 30 years. Close the door, he commanded. I did, then took a seat across from him, smoothing my skirt with steady hands trained by years of patient care. What you're doing, he began, it's not right. Taking a healthcare facility from him. Taking what's rightfully mine and protecting our patients, I corrected. There's a difference. He slammed his hand on the desk. It's vindictive. This isn't how we handle healthcare matters. Healthcare matters? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter like hospital coffee. Like how Nathan and Olivia handled things? By humiliating me in front of our entire staff? That's different. Why? Because he's a man? Because he's supposed to be allowed to do whatever he wants while I just smile and maintain patient care standards? My father's face reddened. You're acting out of anger. No, I cut in, leaning forward. I'm acting out of professional responsibility. Something you taught me. Remember? Never compromise on quality of care. That's what you used to say. The study door opened, and my mother walked in, wiping her hands on her apron, carrying herself with the quiet authority she'd developed over decades as a head nurse. Harrison, enough. Our daughter is right. Eleanor, no. You listen to me. She interrupted, moving to stand behind my chair with the same protective stance she'd shown countless patients. For 10 years, we watched Nathan treat our daughter like she was just a trophy wife who happened to run care facilities, making her doubt her administrative decisions, diminishing her achievements in patient care. And now you're angry because she finally showed him what real healthcare leadership looks like. My phone buzzed, an email from Nathan. I opened it, reading aloud, Evelyn, we need to talk. What happened between us doesn't have to affect the facilities. We can work something out about the medical equipment contracts. Please be reasonable. Ha. See, my father gestured at the phone. He's trying to be reasonable. No, I replied, typing a quick no thank you response. He's panicking because Olivia is probably realizing he's not the wealthy healthcare executive she thought he was. My mother squeezed my shoulder with the gentle touch she'd used to comfort worried families. How are you really doing, sweetheart? I'm okay, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Actually, I'm meeting Daniel and Rachel to go over the next steps in our patient care improvement plan. Daniel, my father frowned. Your lawyer? More schemes? Strategy, I corrected, standing up, and protection. Nathan's not going to take this lying down. As if on cue, my phone rang. Madison. Sis, she said when I answered, heads up. Nathan just left my office. Your office? He tried to convince me to talk you into being reasonable. When I refused, he implied he might have some dirt on Dad's old hospital administration practices. My father's face went pale as he overheard. I put the phone on speaker. What exactly did he say, Madison? Something about irregular Medicare payments from the 90s. He's bluffing, right? My father stood up so quickly his chair rolled back, his face showing the same panic I'd seen when the hospital faced audit crises. That bastard. He promised those records were destroyed. Dad, I turned to him, watching decades of healthcare administration confidence crumble into worry. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her nurse's training failing to mask her shock. Harrison, what records? He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. It was a different time. Healthcare administration was done differently then. I held up my hand, speaking into the phone. Madison, I'll call you back, ending the call. I faced my father with the same focused attention I gave to difficult patient cases. Tell me everything. Now. 20 minutes later, I was back in my car, hands shaking as I dialed Daniel's number. Cancel dinner plans. We need to meet now. Nathan's playing dirtier than we expected. What's wrong? Daniel asked, his medical malpractice expertise evident in his tone. He's going after my father, old Medicare billing practices that could cause problems, big problems. I'm on my way to the office. Bring your father's records, everything you can find. I started the car, my mind racing through possible scenarios with the same efficiency I used in facility crisis management. Nathan wasn't just trying to save himself anymore. He was willing to destroy my entire family's healthcare legacy to do it. The game had changed. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't the same woman who'd silently endured his dismissal of my healthcare management abilities. My phone lit up with a text from my mother, "Do what you need to do. Protect our family's medical reputation. I love you." I took a deep breath, shifted into drive, and headed toward Daniel's office. Nathan wanted to play hardball with patient care? Fine. He was about to learn that ethical healthcare practices weren't his only problem. He had made an enemy of a woman who'd spent her life fighting for what was right. Daniel's office was dark except for his desk lamp when I arrived with my father's old Medicare files. Rachel had joined him, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard as she analyzed healthcare data patterns. "I've been digging," she announced without looking up. "You're not going to believe what I found about Olivia's nursing license history." Later, I said, dropping the files on Daniel's desk. "We need to handle this first." Daniel opened the first folder, scanning documents yellowed with age. His expression grew increasingly grave, his medical malpractice expertise recognizing the severity. "This is serious, Evelyn. These Medicare billing records, if they got out. My father's medical reputation would be ruined," I finished. "I know." Rachel finally looked up from her screen. "But how did Nathan even know about these?" A memory hit me like a crash cart emergency, the annual healthcare conferences. Every year, he'd attend with my father. They'd discuss industry practices, share administrative stories. I grabbed my phone, dialing Madison. "What's up?" she answered immediately. "Those healthcare conferences Nathan attended with Dad, were you ever there when they came back?" "Sometimes. They'd be excited, talking about new industry developments." "Oh God. Dad talked, didn't he?" "Bingo," I said, hanging up. Daniel was already organizing the documents into piles. "Okay, we need to." His office door burst open. Olivia stood there, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, mascara streaked down her face. She spat at me. "You've ruined everything." Rachel stood up, moving between us with the protective instinct of a healthcare professional, but I waved her off. "Please, enlighten me about how I ruined your perfect plan to steal my husband and my facility's medical equipment contracts." "He was never supposed to lose his position," she shrieked. "This isn't what we planned." I leaned forward. "We?" Olivia's face went white. She stumbled backward, but Rachel was faster, closing the door behind her. "Sit down," I commanded, using my administrator voice. "Tell me everything." "I don't have to." "Actually, you do," Daniel interrupted. "Because right now, you're potentially complicit in healthcare fraud." So sit down. She collapsed into a chair, her nurse's uniform crumpled, her perfect image cracking like a broken medical monitor. Marcus started it, she whispered. Marcus? The name hit me like a failed resuscitation. Your ex-husband? She nodded miserably. He knew about Nathan's kickbacks from the medical equipment vendors. Said if I could get Nathan to leave you, to transfer the facility assets before the divorce. Kickbacks? Daniel asked sharply, his medical malpractice radar on full alert. From inflated equipment prices. The facilities were overcharged, and he got a percentage. He owes a lot. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan, last chance. Meet me tomorrow at noon, the cafe where we had our first date, or your father's Medicare history goes public. I showed the message to Daniel, who smiled for the first time that night. Perfect. He's desperate. Rachel turned her laptop around. Speaking of desperate, look what I found. Emails between Marcus and Olivia planning everything, including the equipment pricing schemes and how to use your father's old records if things went wrong. Olivia burst into tears. I'm sorry. Marcus threatened to report my medication errors if I didn't help. I never wanted. Save it, I cut her off, using my best facility administrator tone. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about these equipment contracts. Names, dates, amounts, everything. I can't. These vendors are dangerous. More dangerous than losing your nursing license? I asked quietly. Because right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a medical board investigation. She stared at me for a long moment, then reached for her phone with trembling hands. I have pictures from when I followed him to vendor meetings, the contracts, the real prices versus what we were charged. Daniel examined the photos. This is perfect. These pricing schemes are illegal. If the medical board and state authorities were to receive an anonymous tip, Nathan would be ruined, Rachel finished. No, I said, standing up. First, we meet him tomorrow. Let him think he's winning. Then we protect our patients from both his schemes and his substandard equipment. What about me? Olivia asked in a small voice. I looked at my cousin, this nurse who had tried to take everything from me, now broken and afraid. You're going to help us. For the sake of patient safety and your career, oh, I smiled, Marcus will get exactly what he deserves. Daniel, draft up immunity paperwork for Olivia's testimony to the medical board. Rachel, get those equipment pricing emails ready. Tomorrow at noon, we're having a very interesting coffee date. As Olivia signed the papers Daniel quickly prepared, my phone lit up with another message, this time from my mother. Remember what I taught you about patient advocacy and forgiveness. I typed back, yes, but first, justice for our patients. Looking at the tear-stained face of my cousin, the determined expressions of my friends, and the damning evidence spread across Daniel's desk, I felt the same calm certainty I'd developed during years of patient care. Tomorrow, Nathan would learn that healthcare ethics weren't just guidelines, they were a carefully orchestrated symphony of consequences, and I was conducting every note. The cafe looked exactly the same as it had 12 years ago when Nathan first asked me out, back when I was still a floor nurse and he was just starting in medical equipment sales. The same vintage posters on exposed brick walls, the same mismatched chairs, the same rich coffee aroma. But I was different. I chose a corner table with a clear view of both exits, the same way I positioned myself in difficult patient conferences. Rachel sat at the counter, pretending to work on her laptop. Madison and Daniel waited in a car across the street. Everything was in place. Nathan walked in at exactly noon, wearing his favorite sales presentation suit, the one he wore when closing big equipment deals. He slid into the chair across from me, that familiar smug smile playing on his lips. "You're looking well," he said as if we were meeting for a casual catch-up. "Cut the small talk," I replied. "You threatened my father." He leaned back, adjusting his gold cuff links, a gift from my father last Christmas. "Business is business, darling. You forced my hand. Like you forced Olivia's hand with those inflated equipment prices?" His smile faltered for a split second. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Olivia's voice, tearful but clear, detailing the scheme with Marcus, the kickbacks, everything. The color drained from his face like a patient going into shock. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I slid an envelope across the table. "These are copies of your equipment pricing contracts, showing the real costs versus what you charged our facilities. I wonder what the state medical board would think." "You wouldn't dare," he hissed, but his hands shook as he opened the envelope. "Try me." "Oh, and before you think about those documents about my father," I pulled out another envelope. "Turns out Medicare has a statute of limitations. But healthcare fraud, that's very current." He gripped the table's edge, knuckles white. "What do you want?" "Sign these." I produced a stack of papers. "Full divorce settlement. You walk away with your personal assets, what's left of them, no alimony, no claims on the facilities." "And if I don't?" "Then in about." I checked my watch, the same one I'd worn through countless night shifts, 30 minutes. An anonymous tip about fraudulent medical equipment pricing reaches the authorities, with proof. His face contorted with rage. "You vindictive." "Careful," I interrupted. "Think very carefully about your next words." The cafe door chimed. Olivia walked in, followed by Marcus. "Right on schedule." "What is this?" Nathan demanded, half rising. "Sit down," Marcus ordered, his voice low. "We need to talk about the money you skimmed from those equipment contracts." Nathan's face went from red to white. "You told her?" "She told me everything," I said. "How you inflated prices to cover your gambling debts. How you promised Marcus a piece of the healthcare business once you married Olivia and took control. One problem, though, it was never your business to give away." "You set me up?" Olivia said, her nurse's badge catching the light, tears in her eyes. "Used me to cover your equipment fraud, made me betray my own family and my nursing ethics." Marcus stepped closer to our table. "I want my money, Nathan. Now." I don't have it," Nathan stammered. "Then sign the papers," I said, pushing them toward him. "Walk away, clean start, fresh." His hand trembled as he reached for the pen. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I nodded to Rachel, who pressed send on her laptop. "Those emails about the equipment pricing schemes are now in the possession of every board member and the state medical board. Your reputation in healthcare is finished." He scrolled his signature across each page, desperation replacing arrogance in his eyes. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I learned from the best," I replied, standing up. "You always said healthcare management was about staying one step ahead." As I gathered the signed papers, Marcus grabbed Nathan's arm. "We're going to have a private conversation about payment plans." "Evelyn," Nathan called as I headed for the door, "I'm sorry. I never meant." "Save it," I cut him off. "You're only sorry you got caught compromising patient care." "Goodbye, Nathan." Outside, Madison and Daniel were waiting. "Did he sign?" Daniel asked, his medical malpractice expertise evident in his careful examination of the documents. I handed him the papers. "Every page." "How long until it's official?" "I'll file them today. By next week, you'll be free." Madison hugged me tight. You did it, sis. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Is it done? I typed back, yes. Family dinner tonight? Her response came immediately, of course. Your father's making his famous lasagna. Says he's never been prouder of your commitment to ethical healthcare. Looking back through the cafe window, I watched as Nathan withered under Marcus's quiet threats. Olivia caught my eye and mouthed thank you before slipping away. Ready to go? Madison asked. I took one last look at the cafe where my story with Nathan had begun and where it had just ended. More than ready. It's time for a new chapter in patient care. As we walked away, I heard Nathan's desperate voice floating through the open window, pleading with Marcus. But I didn't look back. Healthcare ethics had finally caught up with him, and I had a facility to run. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, heels clicking against the polished floor. 12 pairs of eyes followed my movement to the head of the table, Nathan's former seat, my seat now. Good morning, I said, placing my laptop down. Shall we begin our patient care review? Harold, the oldest board member and former chief of medicine, cleared his throat. Miss Turner, given the unusual circumstances of your acquisition. You mean how I legally obtained controlling interest while my husband was busy planning to defraud our facilities through inflated equipment prices? I smiled pleasantly. Those circumstances. Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Before Harold could respond, the door burst open. Nathan stormed in, looking considerably less polished than during his sales presentations. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. This meeting can't proceed, he announced. I'm contesting the transfer of ownership. I didn't even look up from my laptop. Security, please escort Mr. Reid out. You can't do this. He slammed his hands on the table. These people need to know what kind of administrator you really are. Now I did look up. You mean the kind who caught her husband trying to embezzle facility funds through fraudulent equipment contracts? The room went deadly quiet. Nathan's face turned purple. That's right, I continued, pulling up documents on the projector screen. Let me show everyone exactly what kind of person I am, and more importantly, what kind of person you are. Spreadsheets filled the screen, detailed records of Nathan's equipment pricing schemes followed by suspicious transfers from facility accounts. I've already reported these discrepancies to the state medical board, I announced. The facilities will cooperate fully with their investigation. You're lying. Nathan sputtered, but his eyes told a different story. The boardroom door opened again, this time 2 security guards entered, followed by Daniel and, to everyone's surprise, Olivia in her nurse's uniform. Actually, Olivia said, her voice shaking slightly but carrying the professional tone of an experienced nurse, she's not lying. I've already given my statement to the medical board about everything, the equipment pricing fraud, the kickbacks, the plan to take over the facilities. Nathan lunged toward her. You treacherous. The security guards caught him before he could reach her. As they dragged him toward the door, he shouted, Your father. The Medicare records. Tell them about his billing practices. My father, I said calmly, maintaining the composed demeanor I'd learned from years of patient care, has already disclosed his past Medicare billing irregularities to the board's ethics committee. Unlike you, he's taken responsibility for his actions. Harold stood up, his medical authority evident in his bearing. I moved to formally recognize Evelyn Turner as CEO and chairperson of our healthcare facilities, effective immediately. Seconded, called out Dr. Maria Chin, our youngest board member. I've seen enough. The vote was unanimous. As the security guards finally managed to remove Nathan, his threats echoing down the hallway, I pulled up the next item on our agenda. Now, I said, let's discuss our facility's future and our commitment to patient care. 2 hours later, I stood in my new office, formerly Nathan's office, staring out at the healing garden below. Daniel entered with a stack of papers. The medical board wants to interview you tomorrow about Nathan's equipment pricing activities, he said. And Marcus has apparently skipped town. Good, I replied. One less problem to deal with. My phone rang. Madison. Sis, you need to turn on the news right now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. There was Nathan, being led out of a medical equipment vendor's office in handcuffs, along with several other sales executives. Anonymous tip, Daniel said with a small smile. Imagine that. Rachel burst into the office, waving her phone. Have you seen? It's everywhere. Healthcare Twitter is blowing up. How's Olivia holding up? I asked. Better, Rachel replied. She's in counseling. Says she wants to make amends through better patient care. The office door opened again, my parents this time. My father looked at the TV, then at me, his years of hospital administration experience evident in his measured response. I was wrong, he said simply. You handled this exactly right. My mother squeezed his hand, her nurse's instincts for caring showing in her gentle smile. We both underestimated you, sweetheart. It won't happen again. Another news alert flashed across the screen. Local healthcare executive arrested for equipment pricing fraud. More arrests expected. You know, Daniel said, for someone who just exposed healthcare fraud, protected patient care standards, and became CEO of 3 care facilities, you seem remarkably calm. I turned away from the TV, facing my family and friends, the people who had stood by me through everything. That's because, for the first time in years, I feel completely aligned with our mission, I said. No more compromising on patient care, no more looking the other way. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Thank you for giving me a second chance to be a proper nurse. I won't waste it. Looking around at my supporters, at the healthcare facilities I'd protected, at the future of ethical patient care I'd secured, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of my victory. Professional integrity hadn't just helped me survive, it had helped me thrive. And this was just the beginning of our journey to better healthcare. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived for Nathan's arraignment. The healthcare industry scandal hadn't died down. Miss Turner, any comment on your ex-husband's plea deal? How does it feel to be the youngest female CEO in regional healthcare? I walked past them, Madison and Daniel flanking me like protective care staff. Inside, the marble halls echoed with whispers as we made our way to courtroom 3. You don't have to be here, Madison whispered. The prosecutor can handle this. I want to see his face, I replied. I need to. The courtroom doors opened, and there he was. Nathan in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. Gone was the designer suit, the arrogant smile, the polished healthcare executive look. He looked small. All rise, the bailiff called out as the judge entered. I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Olivia slipped into the back row, wearing her nurse's uniform, having come straight from her shift. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave a slight nod. In the matter of the State versus Reed, the judge began. The proceedings moved quickly. The prosecutor outlined the charges: healthcare fraud, equipment pricing schemes, kickback arrangements. Nathan's lawyer, a far cry from the prestigious firm he once used, looked defeated before he even spoke. Your Honor, my client wishes to change his plea to guilty on all counts. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Nathan's shoulders slumped. Very well, the judge said. Mr. Reed, please rise. As Nathan stood, He turned slightly, his eyes finding mine. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married, the one who used to talk passionately about improving healthcare through better equipment. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Before I accept your plea, the judge continued, do you wish to make a statement? Nathan cleared his throat. I'd like to address my ex-wife. The judge nodded. I sat straighter, maintaining the professional composure I'd learned through years of difficult patient consultations. Evelyn, his voice cracked. You were right about everything. I thought I was smarter than everyone else. I thought I could manipulate healthcare costs for profit, but you beat me at my own game. And the worst part is, you did it legally, perfectly. Everything I taught you about healthcare business, you used to protect patient care. Is there a point to this? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. I'm trying to say I'm sorry. Not just for the fraud, but for underestimating you, for betraying you, for thinking you were just a nurse who wouldn't fight back. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, while this is touching, we have a plea agreement to discuss. Indeed, the judge said. Mr. Reed, this court accepts your guilty plea based on the agreement reached with the prosecution. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with an additional 3 years of supervised release. As the judge continued listing the terms, including restitution payments to the healthcare facilities, my phone buzzed, a message from one of the medical equipment vendor's compliance officers. You were right. Found the hidden billing records. Sending details now. I forwarded it to Daniel without looking at him. We'd discuss it later. The bang of the gavel brought my attention back to the proceedings. As the bailiff led Nathan away, he tried one last time to catch my eye. I stared straight ahead, the same way I'd learned to maintain focus during medical emergencies. Outside, the reporters were waiting. This time, I stopped. Miss Turner, your response to your ex-husband's courtroom apology? I adjusted my blazer, channeling years of professional healthcare administration. Actions have consequences. Mr. Reed's actions compromised patient care, nearly destroyed our facilities, and ultimately destroyed his career. Let that be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can put profits over patient welfare. Back at my office, I found my parents waiting in the executive suite. My father held up a bottle of sparkling cider, remembering my healthcare facility's no-alcohol policy. The board meeting went well? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Unanimous approval of your 5-year patient care improvement plan, he beamed. And our facility ratings are up 12% since the announcement of Nathan's plea deal. My mother poured the cider. To patient care, she said, raising her glass. To integrity, my father added. To both, I said, clinking glasses with them. My phone buzzed again, a text from Olivia. Thank you for not mentioning my nursing errors in court. I start my new position in geriatric care next week. I typed back, clean slate. Make our patients proud. Looking out my office window at the healing garden below, I watched the sun setting on one chapter of my life and rising on another. The facilities were thriving, Nathan was facing justice, and I. Earth to Evelyn. Madison waved her hand in front of my face. Where'd you go just now? I smiled, turning back to my family. Just thinking about tomorrow. We have work to do. Because that's the thing about healthcare ethics. They don't just protect patients, sometimes they deliver opportunities. And I was ready to seize every single one. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh coffee and antiseptic as I unlocked the door to my old cafe, now transformed into a community health education center. The realtor had called yesterday with the news. The owners were selling, and I'd made the highest bid. It's perfect, Rachel said, running her hand along the exposed brick wall. But why this place? Because, I smiled, sometimes the best revenge is helping others. The vintage posters were being replaced with health education materials, the mismatched chairs rearranged for community workshops, but the bones were good, just like mine had been after Nathan's betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel, medical equipment vendor audit complete. State board moving forward with full investigation. Good news? Rachel asked, noting my expression. The best kind. Justice keeps rolling in. The bell above the door chimed. Olivia walked in, looking different in her new geriatric care scrubs, more like the dedicated nurse I remembered from her early career days. When you asked me to meet you here, she said, glancing around at the health education posters, I almost didn't come. But you did. I pulled out a chair. Sit. We need to talk about our community outreach program. She sat, fidgeting with her ID badge. I heard about the equipment vendor investigation. They found everything. Yes, but that's not why I asked you here. I slid a folder across the table. She opened it, her eyes widening. This is a program proposal, I said. The Education Center needs a director of community health programs, someone who understands both patient care and redemption, someone who needs a real chance to make a difference. Tears welled in her eyes. After everything I did. The past is past, I interrupted. What matters is what we do for our community now. The door chimed again. My parents entered, followed by Madison and Daniel. Well, my father asked, looking around at the health education materials. Is it official? I held up the keys. Just signed the papers this morning. My mother pulled out a small, wrapped package. Then you'll need this. Inside was a framed photo, me at 22, in my first nurse's uniform, learning the value of patient care. Remember what you told me that first day, my mother asked. That someday you'd find a way to help more people. And now she runs 3 care facilities and a health education center, Madison grinned. Daniel cleared his throat. Speaking of helping people, the board approved your proposal to start a foundation supporting healthcare education for underprivileged students. They were particularly impressed with the mentorship program. A program I hope you'll help with, I said to Olivia. Your experience could help guide others toward ethical patient care. She wiped her eyes, nodding. I'd like that. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Former healthcare executive begins prison term. Ex-wife's facilities report record patient satisfaction scores. You know, Rachel said, reading over my shoulder, for someone who lost everything, Nathan sure helped you find your true calling. No, I corrected her. I found my calling in patient care long ago. He just made the mistake of trying to corrupt it. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns on the educational displays. Outside, life moved at its usual hectic pace, but in here, time seemed to slow down to new beginnings. My father raised his glass of water. To ethical healthcare. My mother added, actually, I said, moving behind the old cafe counter, now converted to a reception desk, this place still has a working coffee machine. Let me make us some real drinks to toast with. As I worked the familiar machinery, muscle memory taking over, I caught glimpses of my reflection in the chrome surface. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who'd once sat here, accepting Nathan's first dinner invitation. She was stronger, wiser, more dedicated to her mission. I served the drinks, lattes with perfect foam hearts on top, just like I used to make, and raised my cup. To patient care, I said, which taught me that success isn't about profit margins, it's about making a difference. To second chances, Olivia added softly, and using them wisely. To justice, Madison raised her cup, served with both accountability and compassion. We laughed, and in that moment, I felt the last pieces click into place. The facilities I'd protected would thrive, the education center would become something meaningful, and the foundation would help create the next generation of ethical healthcare providers. As for Nathan, he was just another lesson learned, another chapter closed. The real story had always been about patient care, about finding my power, my voice, my true purpose. The bell chimed again as local residents wandered in, drawn by the new health education posters. I stood behind the counter where my journey had truly begun, ready to write the next chapter on my own terms. Because sometimes, healthcare ethics doesn't just protect patients, it helps you build something better from the challenges you've faced. And that's the most meaningful victory of all. I'm Audrey, and I grew up in the shadow of success. That success belonged to my older sister, Vanessa. Our suburban house was always filled with people, aunts, uncles, cousins, all drawn by the promise of my mother Eleanor's famous garden parties and the chance to see Vanessa perform. Our backyard was like a private theater, with its perfectly manicured lawn and the towering maple tree that served as a natural spotlight. I can still see my father Gerald manning the grill, the aroma of charcoal and seasoned steaks mingling with the evening air, while Mom fluttered among the guests, ensuring everyone's champagne glasses stayed full. Vanessa, darling, Aunt Patricia would inevitably call out, her voice cutting through the ambient chatter like a crystal bell, "Why don't you give us one of your lovely performances?" And just like that, all eyes would shift to my sister. Vanessa would gracefully step onto the stone patio, her golden hair catching the last rays of sunset, a mischievous glint in her hazel eyes. She'd clear her throat with theatrical flair, and then pure magic would fill the air. My Heart Will Go On was her signature piece, her voice carrying the same emotional depth as Celine Dion herself. The gathered crowd would erupt in enthusiastic applause, some wiping away tears of joy. Dad would beam with unmistakable pride, while Mom would squeeze his hand, their faces glowing with parental satisfaction. Meanwhile, I'd find myself retreating to the edges of our property, trying to blend into the shadows of the maple tree. It wasn't that I didn't want to participate, I did, desperately. But every time I attempted to sing, my voice would emerge as something between a strangled cat and a rusty door hinge. Poetry? Even worse. The words would tangle themselves into knots on my tongue, leaving me red-faced and stammering before I could finish the first verse. I'd catch snippets of conversations, relatives whispering about how different I was from Vanessa. "It's hard to believe they're sisters," they'd murmur behind their wine glasses. But it wasn't just the extended family. Mom and Dad made it crystal clear who held the spotlight in our household. While Vanessa was chauffeured between dance classes, vocal coaching, and art workshops, I was left to my own devices. Not that I complained much, I found my own sanctuary in the dusty investment and business books that lined our home library's shelves. In this world of performances and expectations, only one person truly saw me for who I was: Great Aunt Diana. She'd find me in my usual hideouts, behind the garage or tucked away in my makeshift reading nook under the maple tree, always with a business or investment book in hand. "What fascinating subject are you exploring today, Audrey?" she'd ask, carefully lowering herself onto the grass beside me. Her voice carried a warmth that made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time each day. I'd look up from my book, grateful for the interruption that, for once, didn't feel like an intrusion. "I'm reading about real estate investment strategies," I'd reply, showing her the well-worn cover of my latest find. "Did you know that property value isn't just about location? It's about understanding market trends and demographic shifts too." Diana would nod, her eyes twinkling with understanding behind her wire-rimmed glasses. "You've got a brilliant mind for business, dear. Don't ever let anyone dim that light." She'd often bring me articles about successful women in business, quietly nurturing my growing interest in finance and management. Those moments with Aunt Diana were like finding an oasis in a desert, a place where I could simply be Audrey, the girl who dreamed of building her own empire, not just the quiet sister who couldn't carry a tune. She never expected me to be anyone but myself, never compared me to Vanessa, never suggested I try harder to fit into the family's performance-oriented mold. But even Diana's unwavering support couldn't completely erase the sting of being the forgotten Thompson daughter. Every time Vanessa mastered a new song or won another local talent competition, our parents would shower her with lavish gifts, designer clothes, the latest iPhone, even a brand new laptop for her creative projects. Meanwhile, I received practical items from the clearance rack and thinly veiled suggestions about finding my place. The disparity was never more apparent than during our birthday celebrations. While Vanessa's parties were elaborate affairs with professional photographers and custom cakes, mine were often afterthoughts, marked by hastily bought cards and gifts that felt more like obligations than expressions of love. The message was clear: in the Thompson household, some stars shone brighter than others. School became my sanctuary, my personal stage where academic excellence replaced musical performances. While I might not have been Miss Popular, I discovered my true element in the classroom. I refused to be a passive observer. Instead, I approached each lesson with the same intensity Vanessa brought to her performances. "Mrs. Harrison," I'd say after advanced economics class, my voice quiet but steady, "could you explain more about market elasticity? I want to make sure I fully understand how it applies to real-world business scenarios." She'd smile, clearly pleased by my genuine interest and analytical approach. "Of course, Audrey. Your questions always show such depth of understanding," she'd respond, often staying late to discuss economic theories and their practical applications. When teachers couldn't spare extra time, I'd request reading recommendations, particularly focusing on business and investment strategies. My backpack became a mobile library, heavy with books about financial markets, property investment, and business management. I'd stay up late in my room, my desk lamp casting a small circle of light as I pored over these texts, absorbing every detail about business strategies and investment principles. While Vanessa's music drifted through the walls from her evening practice sessions, I was building my own kind of expertise, even if no one else seemed to notice or care. All this dedication began to pay off spectacularly. By senior year, I wasn't just top of my class, I was running the school's investment club and had already started a small online business reselling vintage clothing, carefully reinvesting every dollar of profit. My economics teacher even asked me to tutor struggling students, which I did during lunch breaks. Meanwhile, our house had transformed into Vanessa Central as college application season approached. Mom spent countless hours helping her perfect her portfolio for the prestigious performing arts program at Juilliard. "Oh, sweetheart, this audition piece is absolutely perfect," Mom would gush, watching Vanessa rehearse. "You're going to take Broadway by storm." I'd retreat to my room, surrounded by my business plans and investment spreadsheets, trying to ignore the familiar ache in my chest. But one evening, during yet another family dinner dominated by Vanessa's college prospects, something in me snapped. "I'm applying to Wharton's School of Business," I announced, my voice cutting through their conversation about Vanessa's upcoming auditions. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to my absolute humiliation, they all burst into laughter. "Oh, sweetie," Mom said, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes, "be realistic. We can't afford 2 college tuitions, and you're just not, well, you're not Wharton material. You should focus on something more practical. Besides, Gerald's cousin Frank is always looking for help at his diner." The confrontation, I felt like I'd been slapped. Heat rushed to my face, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment, it was pure, white-hot anger. Not Wharton material? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Let me show you something. I stormed upstairs to my room, grabbed my portfolio filled with perfect grades, investment club achievements, and the detailed business plan for my growing online venture and returned to slam it on the dinner table, right next to Vanessa's sheet music. Look at this, I demanded, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Straight A's in every advanced business and economics class. President of the investment club. A profitable online business I built from scratch. My SAT scores are in the top percentile. So tell me, what exactly about me isn't Wharton material? They all leaned in to examine my achievements, their eyes widening in genuine surprise. Well, I'll be damned, Dad muttered, adjusting his glasses. When did all this happen? It's been happening for years, I replied, my voice ice cold. Not that any of you ever bothered to notice. You were too busy watching Vanessa's performances to see what I was building. Mom at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. Audrey, we had no idea you were so. But Dad cut her off. Look, it doesn't change the financial reality. We've invested everything in Vanessa's future. Her talent needs proper nurturing. There's simply nothing left for your business experiments. I stood there, staring at them, finally seeing with perfect clarity what I'd always known but never wanted to admit. In their eyes, I would always be second best, the supporting act to Vanessa's star performance. Fine, I said, gathering my portfolio with steady hands. If you won't support my dreams, I'll find another way. I always have. I turned and walked away, ignoring their calls. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I heard Mom saying, "She'll get over it. She always does." But this time was different. This time, something had fundamentally changed. The following months passed in a blur of focused determination. While Vanessa prepared for her Juilliard auditions, accompanied by tearful good luck wishes and endless family support, I threw myself into my own preparations with renewed intensity. During this time, I found myself spending more and more time at Aunt Diana's cozy Victorian house in the quieter part of town. Her home became my refuge, with its wall-to-wall bookshelves and the perpetual scent of freshly baked cookies. One afternoon, as we sat in her sunny kitchen nook sharing tea and homemade scones, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, Audrey," she said, stirring honey into her tea, her eyes kind but direct, "what are your plans after graduation? Have you heard back from any schools?" I stared into my teacup, watching the steam rise in delicate swirls. "I got into Wharton," I said quietly, then quickly added before she could celebrate, "but it doesn't matter. Mom and Dad won't help with tuition. They say they've spent everything on Vanessa's performing arts education." Diana set down her teacup with a decisive clink. "Tell me, dear, how much would you need for the first year?" I pulled out a carefully prepared spreadsheet from my bag. I'd been carrying it everywhere, running the numbers over and over. Even with the partial scholarship I received, I'd need about $45,000 for the first year. I've saved $12,000 from my online business, but... "Audrey," Diana interrupted, reaching across the table to take my hand, "I've been watching you work toward this dream for years. Your dedication, your intelligence, your business sense, they're extraordinary. I have some savings that I've been holding onto for something worthwhile. I can't think of anything more worthwhile than investing in your future." I stared at her, hardly daring to breathe. "Aunt Diana, I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will," she said firmly. "Consider it an investment, if that makes you feel better. When you're a successful businesswoman, you can pay me back with interest." She winked, and I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. The reality of what she was offering hit me like a tidal wave. I burst into tears, overwhelmed by this unexpected lifeline. Thank you, I sobbed, moving around the table to hug her. Thank you so much, Aunt Diana. I promise I won't let you down. Time seemed to accelerate after that conversation. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, my honors cords heavy around my neck. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Diana beaming proudly, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. My parents were there too, their expressions a mixture of pride and discomfort. That evening, as I organized my college acceptance materials, Mom appeared in my doorway. Audrey, honey, she said, her voice syrupy sweet, your father's cousin Frank called again about that waitressing position. You really should consider it, it's such a stable job. I looked up from my papers, my back straightening. Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to Wharton in the fall. Dad materialized behind her, his face darkening. And how exactly do you plan to pay for that? Aunt Diana is helping me, I said firmly, meeting his gaze. She believes in my potential. The silence that followed was broken by Dad's explosive reaction. Absolutely not, he thundered, his face flushing red. If Diana has money to spare, it should go to Vanessa. She needs a car for her internship at the theater next year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I asked, my voice razor sharp. This is my chance to build a future, to make something of myself. Don't be selfish, Audrey, Mom chimed in, wringing her hands. Your sister's career needs that support more than you need another degree. Business degrees are a dime a dozen, but talent like Vanessa's is rare. No, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. This is my opportunity, my future. Aunt Diana chose to invest in me, and I'm accepting. End of discussion. From that moment on, the atmosphere at home became unbearable. My parents alternated between icy silence and passive-aggressive comments. After a particularly nasty argument where Dad suggested I was stealing from Vanessa's future, I called Aunt Diana. Pack your bags, sweetheart, she said without hesitation after hearing my tearful explanation. You're moving in with me until college starts. The next morning, I loaded my belongings into a rideshare, watching my childhood home disappear in the rearview mirror. As we pulled up to Aunt Diana's Victorian house, with its welcoming porch and blooming garden, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The summer stretched ahead of me, full of possibility and free from the constant shadow of being the other daughter. Thanks to my academic excellence and Aunt Diana's support, I stepped onto Wharton's campus that fall with a mixture of excitement and determination. My first business strategy lecture felt like coming home. Every word resonated with the dreams I'd been nurturing for years. Meanwhile, Vanessa was starting her final year at Juilliard. I rarely heard from her or my parents, but through Aunt Diana's updates, I learned that things weren't going as planned. Then, about a month into the semester, my phone lit up with Diana's name. Audrey, dear, she said, her voice carrying an unusual tension, you might want to sit down for this. My heart raced as she shared the latest family drama. Vanessa had suddenly dropped out of Juilliard, announcing she was pregnant. Don't worry about it, she'd apparently told our shocked parents, tossing her golden hair with characteristic confidence. The father is from an extremely wealthy family. We'll be getting married soon. But the story took an unexpected turn. It emerged that Vanessa had been involved with multiple men, including her wealthy boyfriend's best friend. When the truth came out, her boyfriend's promises of marriage and financial security evaporated. Now they weren't even sure who the father was. I sat in my dorm room, phone pressed to my ear, torn between disbelief and a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction the golden child had fallen from grace. But mostly, I felt a profound sadness for my sister and the mess she'd created. The saga continued to unfold over the following months. Through Aunt Diana's regular updates, I learned that a DNA test eventually confirmed her ex-boyfriend was indeed the father. Instead of the fairy tale wedding Vanessa had envisioned, she received a coldly negotiated child support agreement. The final irony? She ended up taking that waitressing job at Uncle Frank's diner, the very position my parents had tried to push on me. As I hung up after each call with Diana, I felt an increasingly complex mixture of emotions. The petty part of me wanted to gloat, to remind my family of their mistake in dismissing my potential. But more than anything, I felt grateful for the path I'd chosen and the aunt who'd helped make it possible. The years at Wharton passed in a whirlwind of business cases, financial models, and leadership seminars. Before I knew it, I was walking across another stage, this time receiving my business degree with honors. In the audience, Aunt Diana beamed with pride, tears streaming down her face. Thanks to my outstanding academic record and several successful internships, I secured a position as a junior manager at the Lux Heights, one of the most prestigious real estate development firms in the city. The starting salary exceeded my wildest expectations, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly successful. With my first substantial paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I visited the most exclusive electronics store in the city and purchased the latest iPhone for Aunt Diana. Her face lit up when I presented it to her. "Oh, Audrey," she gasped, turning the sleek device over in her hands, "this is far too extravagant." I smiled, already pulling out my own phone. "Not at all. Now, let me show you how to use all the features." Over the next few weeks, I taught her about social media, especially WhatsApp, which became our primary way of staying connected. She took to it surprisingly quickly, particularly loving the voice message feature. Soon, our daily communications were filled with her warm voice-sharing updates about her garden, her book club, and her famous apple pie experiments. Then one day, as I was reviewing property development plans in my office, my phone buzzed with my mother's name, a rare occurrence these days. "Audrey," her voice was hesitant, we were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed to a Sunday visit. Standing on my childhood home's porch that weekend, I felt strangely detached. Inside, I found my parents, Vanessa, and my young niece whom I'd never met. The atmosphere was tense, but not hostile, as I'd feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said, his voice gruff but carrying a hint of warmth. "We hear you're doing exceptionally well at Lux Heights." I nodded, maintaining my professional composure. "Yes, I'm now managing several major development projects." Mom cleared her throat nervously. That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." Over the next hour, they attempted to apologize for their past treatment, admitting they'd been wrong to dismiss my potential. Then came the real reason for the reunion. "Audrey," Mom said, glancing at Vanessa, who was bouncing her daughter on her knee, "we were wondering if you might be able to help Vanessa get a position at your company. She's been struggling at the diner and with little Emma to think about." I studied my sister, who still wouldn't meet my eyes directly. "I'll see what I can do," I said carefully. "But I can't make any promises." True to my word, I spoke with our HR department about an administrative position for Vanessa. To my surprise, she excelled in the role. She was punctual, efficient, and her natural charm worked well with clients. As weeks passed, I found myself gradually relaxing around her. We weren't best friends, but we developed a cordial professional relationship. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, an unexpected opportunity arose. Mr. Richards, the CEO of Lux Heights, called me into his office. My heart raced until I saw his broad smile. "Audrey, how would you feel about heading up our new international division?" Soon, I was overseeing not just local developments, but projects across 3 continents. My days became a whirlwind of virtual meetings, site visits, and strategic planning sessions. It was exhausting but exhilarating, everything I'd ever dreamed of. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase, and suddenly I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents started becoming more frequent. At first, it was just minor things. "The roof is leaking," Mom would say hesitantly. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out a little." I surprised myself by saying yes, finding satisfaction in being able to solve their problems with a simple bank transfer. It started with the roof repairs, then progressed to a new heating system, and before long, I was funding their entire home renovation. As their financial situation improved thanks to my monthly support, the familiar family parties resumed. But this time, the dynamic was different. "Have you heard about Audrey's latest project?" Mom would proudly tell relatives. "She's developing luxury properties in Dubai. We're so proud of her." I'd occasionally catch Vanessa's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small, knowing smile. She was doing well too, having been promoted to Senior Client Relations Manager. "My girls," Dad would say, an arm around each of us, both making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to remind them of their past dismissiveness, but a larger part basked in their approval, something I'd craved for so long. One Sunday afternoon, everything changed. I was reviewing development proposals in my home office when I received a WhatsApp message from Aunt Diana. "Listen to this," her text read, followed by a voice memo from the previous night's family gathering, one I'd missed due to a business trip. I pressed play, expecting to hear typical family chatter. Instead, my mother's slightly intoxicated voice filled my ears. "And Audrey, that ungrateful girl," she was saying, "she barely helps us at all. You'd think with all her success she could do more for her family." "That's right," Dad's voice chimed in, equally slurred. "We're getting by thanks to Vanessa's hard work. Audrey just got lucky with that company. She's riding on their success, that's all." The recording continued, with various relatives murmuring in agreement. Vanessa remained silent in the background, neither defending me nor joining in. My hands trembled as I scrolled through subsequent messages where my parents desperately begged Diana to delete the recording. Diana's response was clear: "I may be old, but I know exactly what I'm doing by sharing this. It's time Audrey saw the truth about how you really view her success." I sat there, staring at my phone, my mind replaying the voices over and over. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. After everything, the monthly payments, the house renovations, the generous holiday gifts, they still saw me as nothing more than a lucky opportunist. With trembling fingers, I dialed Diana's number. "Oh, Audrey dear," she answered, her voice full of gentle concern. "I take it you've heard the recording." "Yes," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't believe it, Aunt Diana. All this time, even after everything." "They've always been like this, sweetheart," she replied, anger evident in her usually calm voice. "You just haven't been around to hear it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you needed to know the truth." We talked for hours, my emotional state cycling through shock, anger, and grief. As evening fell over the city skyline outside my penthouse windows, I reached a decision. "I'm cutting them off," I told Diana, my voice finding its strength again. "No more money, no more help. They've shown their true colors." The days that followed were surreal. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their words from the recording played on repeat in my mind, like a toxic melody I couldn't shake. After a week of silence, I sent them a brief, professional text. "I've heard the recording. I now understand your true feelings about my success. Don't contact me regarding financial matters again. All support stops immediately. Their responses flooded in instantly. At first, they were apologetic. Sweetie, we didn't mean any of it. We were just talking nonsense. But as days passed and I maintained my silence, their tone shifted dramatically. We're your parents. You owe us. How dare you abandon your family? Each message confirmed that I'd made the right decision. Vanessa, surprisingly, remained professional at work. I'm staying neutral, she told me during a project meeting. This is between you and them. I nodded, appreciating her stance, even if part of me wished she'd acknowledge the truth she'd witnessed firsthand. As weeks turned into months, my relationship with Aunt Diana grew even stronger. Our Sunday video calls became the highlight of my week. She'd share stories about her latest gardening triumphs or show me her experiments with new bread recipes, providing a welcome sense of genuine family connection amidst the chaos. You're doing the right thing, Audrey, she'd reassure me during moments of doubt. Don't let them manipulate you again. True family supports each other without keeping score. To my surprise, other relatives began reaching out. Cousin Rachel, who'd always been kind at family gatherings, sent a heartfelt email. I heard the recording, Audrey. I want you to know that I think you're incredible. What you've achieved, how you've handled everything, you're an inspiration. Don't let anyone diminish your success. Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, called unexpectedly. Kid, I've watched you grow from that quiet girl with business books to this amazing woman. Your parents are fools if they can't see how special you are. You've got real family in your corner, remember that. As the year drew to a close, Mr. Richards called me into his office again. My heart was steady this time. I'd learned to trust my abilities. Audrey, he said, leaning back in his chair with a satisfied smile, I'm retiring next year. I want you to take over as CEO of Lux Heights. I stood there, momentarily speechless. Finally, I managed to ask, are you certain about this? He nodded, his expression serious but pleased. I've never been more sure of anything. You've transformed this company, Audrey. Our international division has flourished under your leadership. It's time you took the reins completely. As I left his office, looking out over the city skyline from our top-floor headquarters, I realized something profound. That quiet girl who'd hidden behind business books had become exactly who she'd always dreamed of being. Not because of family connections or luck, but through determination, intelligence, and hard work. Success, I realized, wasn't about proving anything to anyone else, it was about being true to yourself and your vision. The little girl who'd been overlooked had grown into a woman who couldn't be ignored, and better yet, she'd done it on her own terms. Aunt Diana insisted on throwing a celebration dinner for my CEO appointment. As we sat in my penthouse, sharing her famous apple pie and champagne, she pulled out an old photo album I'd never seen before. Look at this, she said, pointing to a photo of a young girl curled up with a business book under the maple tree. I took this the day you first told me you wanted to run your own company. You were 12, but your eyes held such determination. I stared at the image, remembering that day clearly. I was reading about real estate development, I recalled, smiling. Everyone else was watching Vanessa's backyard concert, but I was dreaming about building skyscrapers. And now look at you, Diana said proudly, gesturing to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, the city skyline glittering beyond them. You didn't just dream about skyscrapers, you're building them. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents had spent years investing in Vanessa's performances, believing she was their ticket to success. Instead, their overlooked daughter had become the one thing they'd never expected, a self-made woman who'd achieved everything they'd dreamed of, and more. As I hugged Diana goodbye that evening, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. The recording had been a blessing in disguise, forcing me to finally see the truth I'd been avoiding. Success wasn't about gaining my parents' approval or proving them wrong, it was about being true to myself and my vision. Standing at my window later that night, watching the city lights twinkle below, I smiled to myself. The quiet girl who'd hidden in the shadows had stepped into her own spotlight, not on a backyard stage, but in the world of business she'd always dreamed of. And this time, the applause was all her own. My name is Vanessa, and at 32, I've dedicated the past decade to building my career at Morgan Stanley's investment banking division. While my younger sisters, Olivia and Camille, were focused on starting their families, I was climbing the corporate ladder, eventually reaching the position of vice president. Don't get me wrong, I love my job and the view from my corner office on the 47th floor of our Manhattan headquarters. But sometimes, during those late nights reviewing merger documents, I wonder if I missed out on something along the way. No husband, no kids, just me and my premium leather executive chair that probably costs more than my sister's monthly mortgage payments. It was a typical Tuesday morning when my phone lit up with Olivia's name. At 26, my youngest sister had always been the bubbly one, though her enthusiasm usually came with a price tag attached. I answered while sorting through a stack of IPO documents on my glass desk. "Hey V." Olivia's voice chirped through my iPhone's speaker. "Got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" I shuffled some confidentiality agreements aside, half listening as I reviewed our latest client's financials. "So, you know Mom's turning 60 in 2 months, right?" She paused for effect, a habit she'd perfected over years of asking for favors. "Well, we're planning something special and we need everyone to chip in." That got my attention. I set down my Mont Blanc pen, already dreading the number that was about to come out of her mouth. When Olivia named the figure, I nearly choked on my $7 artisanal coffee. It was more than my last business class flight to London, which, come to think of it, was just 3 months ago for a merger deal. "I know it's a lot," Olivia rushed to add, her voice taking on that sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "But it's for Mom, you know." No, it's fine," I said, already pulling up my banking app on my second monitor. "I'll transfer it right now." "Great. Oh, and one more thing, make sure you take a week off work for the celebration. Don't plan anything else for that time, okay?" I glanced at my calendar, already populated with board meetings and client presentations. "When exactly?" "We'll let you know," she said quickly. "Just keep your schedule flexible." The next few weeks flew by in a blur of merger negotiations and earnings reports. I'd occasionally wonder what my sisters were planning with all that money, but whenever I asked, they'd brush me off with vague responses. Eventually, work took over, and Mom's birthday slipped to the back of my mind, buried under quarterly projections and market analyses. Then came the Saturday dinner at my parents' house in Connecticut. We all gathered there, Mom and Dad, my sisters, Uncle Robert's family, including my cousins Gabriel and Isabel. The familiar chaos of family dinner surrounded us, Dad attempting to discuss the stock market, though he'd never worked in finance, Mom fussing over everyone's plates, the usual stuff. That's when Olivia dropped her bomb. "So," Olivia said, pushing her organic quinoa around her plate with calculated casualness, "we finally got everything arranged for Mom's birthday. We're all going to spend a week at the Four Seasons Resort in Vail." The table erupted in excited chatter. Mom was beaming, Dad was already talking about hitting the Black Diamond slopes, and my sisters were discussing which spa treatments they wanted to try first. "Why didn't anyone tell me earlier?" I asked, feeling that familiar outsider sensation creeping in. "I don't even have proper ski gear, and there's barely any time to get fitted now." The table got quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that falls in a boardroom right before someone gets fired. Mom cleared her throat, and I felt my stomach drop before she even opened her mouth. "Actually, honey," she said with that tone she used when she was about to ask for something that would cost me either money or time, usually both, "we were hoping you could do us all a huge favor and watch the kids while we're there." I stared at my family gathered around the mahogany dining table, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was all a joke, but the silence stretched on, broken only by the soft clink of sterling silver against Wedgwood china. "You want me to watch the kids?" I finally managed to say, my voice sounding as foreign as a hostile takeover bid. "All 5 of them?" My mind started counting them off automatically: Camille's toddler, Jason; Olivia's baby girl, Lucy; cousin Gabriel's twins, Tom and Anna; and Isabel's son, Pete. 5 kids under the age of 7. "Well, you're so good with them," Mom said as if that explained everything, adjusting her new tennis bracelet, a gift from Dad that probably cost what I spent on my first car. "They love their Aunt Vanessa." I looked around the table again, still hoping to see a hint of humor in someone's eyes. There was none, just expectant faces waiting for my usual yes, the same way my junior analysts waited for my approval on their financial models. "But that's not fair," I heard myself say, my voice carrying the same edge I used in tough negotiations. "I want to celebrate with everyone too. It's Mom's birthday." Camille, my 28-year-old sister, put down her fork with a sigh that reeked of condescension. "Come on, Vanessa, you'll be bored there anyway. It's going to be noisy and crowded. You're used to your quiet condo and your perfect routine." "Bored?" I repeated, feeling like I was defending a merger strategy to skeptical shareholders. "How would you know if I'd be bored?" "Well," she continued, exchanging knowing glances with Olivia like they were co-conspirators in a deal I wasn't privy to, "you're great with the kids, they adore you, and let's be honest, it's not like you need a break from family life." I felt my chest tighten, the same way it did before making million-dollar decisions. "What's that supposed to mean?" Olivia jumped in, her voice carrying that condescending tone she'd perfected since marrying into old money. "She just means that you don't have children or a husband to get away from. The rest of us need this break. I mean, you spend most of your time in that fancy office anyway, right?" The organic vegetables on my plate blurred as I blinked back tears. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I hadn't cried in the office when I made VP, and I wouldn't cry now. Instead, I quietly pushed back my chair, the sound echoing against the hardwood floors. "Vanessa," Mom's voice held a note of concern, but not enough to actually stop her from sipping her expensive Chardonnay. Without a word, I grabbed my Hermes bag from the counter and headed for the door. Nobody moved to stop me, nobody called out. The only sound that followed me was Mom's voice drifting from the dining room. "Don't worry, she'll come around. She always does. She knows what family means." As I walked to my Mercedes in the circular driveway, their voices faded behind me, already moving on to discussing ski instructors and winter wardrobes. The evening air was crisp against my face, helping to clear my head the same way a late-night walk through Manhattan did after a tough day at the office. 10 years of putting everyone else first, of being the responsible one, the reliable one, and this is what I got in return. The worst part wasn't even the babysitting request, it was the casualness with which they'd assumed I'd agree, the way they'd planned this whole thing without me, using my money, my time, my vacation days, without even asking, as if I was just another asset to be leveraged, not a member of the family to be included. I spent half the night pacing around my penthouse apartment, my Louboutins long discarded by the door, replaying every family dinner, every holiday, every moment when I dropped everything to help someone else. The memories came flooding back, each one taking on a new, darker meaning in light of tonight's events. There I was at 16, making dinner while Mom helped Camille with her homework. Me at 18, turning down a spring break trip to Cancun with friends to watch Olivia while our parents took a weekend getaway to the Hamptons. At 21, working 2 internships during business school to help pay for Camille's private college tuition. The images kept coming year after year, sacrifice after sacrifice. Vanessa, can you watch Jason for a few hours? Camille's voice echoed in my head. I need to get my hair done at that new salon in Soho. Vanessa, would you mind taking the twins for the weekend? Gabriel's familiar request played back like a broken record. Isabel's overwhelmed with Pete, and you're so good with kids. Plus, your place is so much bigger than ours. I'd always said yes. Always. Even when I had crucial client meetings the next day, even when I was exhausted from 80-hour work weeks, I'd taken pride in being the reliable one, the responsible sister, the perfect daughter. Being the family's safety net had become as much a part of my identity as my career achievements. I collapsed onto my Italian leather sofa, the cool material a stark contrast to the warmth of the Manhattan lights twinkling through my floor-to-ceiling windows. The photo albums on my custom-built coffee table caught my eye. Family vacations where I was always the one behind the camera. Holiday gatherings where I was always in the kitchen while everyone else laughed in the living room. When was the last time someone had asked me what I wanted? It's not like you need a break from family life. Olivia's words kept echoing in my head as if my life, my career, my choices were somehow less valid because I wasn't married with children, as if all my sacrifices, the missed holidays, the late-night emergency babysitting, the small loans that were never repaid, meant nothing because they didn't fit their definition of what mattered. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I tossed and turned in my king-size bed, remembering how I'd worked through Wharton Business School on a scholarship, determined not to burden my parents financially, how I'd started my career immediately after graduation, helping to put both my sisters through their liberal arts colleges, all those late nights at the office climbing the corporate ladder, sending chunks of my salary home to help with family expenses. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't a confrontational person. You don't make VP in investment banking by burning bridges. There had to be a way to resolve this peacefully, to make them understand without causing a family rift. So, I did what I'd always done when there was a problem. I tried to fix it like I would approach a difficult merger. I waited until a reasonable hour on Sunday morning before picking up my phone. Mom answered on the 3rd ring, probably just back from her tennis lesson. "Hi Mom," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I did during board presentations. "I've been thinking about the Vail trip. Actually, I have a solution. I'll pay for a professional nanny service for all 5 kids. Top tier, fully vetted, with excellent references. That way, everyone can enjoy the celebration together." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a moment too long, like a pause before rejecting a proposal. "That won't work, Vanessa," Mom finally said, her voice tight. "We can't trust some stranger with the children. They're used to you." "Mom, I want to be part of the celebration too," I tried to explain, using my most persuasive client pitch voice. "I want to be there for your birthday. I could find the best childcare service in the city, someone with impeccable credentials." "You're not exactly a social butterfly," she cut me off, her voice sharp as a hostile takeover. "You'd probably be uncomfortable with all the noise and activity anyway. The children will keep you busy, and you enjoy spending time with them. It's perfect for everyone." The click of the call ending echoed in my ear before I could respond, reminiscent of doors closing after failed negotiations. I was still staring at my phone, processing my mother's abrupt hang-up, when it buzzed again. Olivia's name flashed across the screen. "How dare you?" she hissed before I could even say hello. Mom just told me about your little suggestion about hiring a nanny. Are you trying to ruin everything? I sat up straighter in my ergonomic office chair, my sister's hostile tone catching me off guard like an unexpected market crash. Ruin everything? I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. We already have a solution. Olivia's voice rose to a pitch that would make a fire alarm envious. Everything's planned, Vanessa, everything. And now you're being completely selfish, trying to change all our arrangements at the last minute. The accusation hit me like a failed IPO presentation. I'm being selfish? Yes, you are. We've been planning this for weeks. Everyone's excited. The Four Seasons is booked, the ski lessons are scheduled, the spa treatments are reserved, and now you want to throw a wrench in everything because you can't just do this one thing for the family? My hand started shaking, gripping my phone like it was the last share in a bullish market. One thing? Are you serious? You know what? If you ruin this trip for everyone, if you spoil Mom's birthday celebration, don't bother talking to me again. I mean it, Vanessa. The line went dead faster than a tech startup's funding. I sat there, stunned by my baby sister's threat, when my phone buzzed with incoming messages. This time from Camille. Family needs to stick together, her first text read. We all help each other out. Another message popped up. Remember when I watched your condo that weekend you went to London for work? And another, you're good with the kids. They love you. Why can't you just forget about being resentful and think about what's best for the family? My fingers flew across the keyboard as I replied, channeling the same precision I used in corporate emails. A real family doesn't take advantage of each other. A real family respects each other's wishes and includes everyone in their plans. A real family doesn't manipulate and guilt-trip each other. I watched the three dots appear and disappear several times, like a volatile stock price, but no response came. That's when it hit me, the way they'd asked for money without explaining what it was for, the careful way they told me to take time off work without mentioning the Four Seasons, the casual way they'd announced their plans at dinner as if everything was already set in stone. They'd planned this all along, executing it with the precision of a hostile takeover. While I was working late nights, while I was babysitting their kids, while I was being the perfect daughter and sister, they were secretly arranging this trip. They'd used my money, arranged my schedule, and planned to dump 5 children on me without so much as a conversation. And now that I wasn't playing along with their script, they were trying every manipulation tactic they could think of, guilt, threats, emotional blackmail, to force me back into the box they'd created for me. Something strange happens when you finally see through the fog of manipulation. It's like when a complex market pattern suddenly becomes clear. Everything snaps into focus. I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd just closed the biggest deal of my career. The guilt that had been weighing me down was replaced by something else, determination. I opened my laptop, the same one I used to make million-dollar decisions, and started searching. Within an hour, I had booked a suite at the Ritz-Carlton in Grand Cayman. Nothing too extravagant by my standards, but it had a private balcony overlooking 7 Mile Beach and a dedicated concierge. I even upgraded to first class on my favorite airline. After all, I had plenty of money since I wouldn't be skiing at Vail. The next few days at the office were surprisingly peaceful. My family had stopped calling and texting, probably assuming I was home preparing for a week of childcare, maybe buying extra organic snacks and planning educational activities. The thought made me smile as I packed my resort wear and new swimsuits from Neiman Marcus. Taking a tropical vacation in the middle of winter, my colleague Jessica asked when she saw me checking the Cayman Islands weather forecast between client calls. Sometimes you need to do something unexpected, I replied, surprised by how good it felt to say those words out loud, like announcing a successful merger. The morning of my flight, I took one last look around my penthouse. I'd cleaned everything meticulously, force of habit, I suppose. The empty Sub-Zero fridge, the properly locked floor-to-ceiling windows, everything in perfect order, just like my investment portfolios. Except this time, I wouldn't be here to answer any desperate phone calls for emergency babysitting. As the plane took off, I switched off my phone and tucked it into my Bottega Veneta bag. No social media, no email, no family drama. Just me, the Caribbean, and a whole week of freedom that I'd earned with every late night at the office and every sacrificed weekend. The Cayman air hit me like a warm embrace when I stepped out of the airport. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, and I could smell the salt from the ocean, even from here. My suite was even better than the pictures online. The balcony offered a perfect view of the endless blue horizon, and I could hear the waves crashing against the pristine white sand. That first afternoon, I walked barefoot on the beach, letting the warm sand squeeze between my toes, a far cry from the marble floors of my office building. When was the last time I'd done something like this? When was the last time I'd done anything just for me? I swam in the infinity pool, read a novel that wasn't a business book without interruption, and had dinner at a quiet oceanfront restaurant where no one needed me to cut their food or clean up their spills. I watched the sunset from my balcony, sipping a glass of vintage champagne without a single thought about bedtime routines or morning schedules. For the first time in years, my time was truly my own. My last morning in Grand Cayman, I savored my final moments of peace over fresh fruit and coffee on my balcony. I knew I'd have to turn my phone back on eventually, face whatever chaos I'd left behind, but I hadn't expected quite what I found. When my phone finally powered up, it started buzzing nonstop, messages, voicemails, calls, hundreds of them. The timestamp showed they started exactly a week ago, early in the morning. My hands trembled slightly as I began scrolling through them, like reviewing a particularly volatile market report. The first messages were from Olivia. "Where are you?" "We're outside your condo." Then Camille, "Vanessa, open the door. The kids are getting restless." Gabriel, "Hey, we brought Tom and Anna like planned. Are you home?" Isabel, "Vanessa, what's going on?" "Pete's asking for his Auntie V." As I read through the messages, I could picture the scene perfectly, my sisters and cousins standing outside my empty penthouse with 5 confused children, their Louis Vuitton luggage packed for the resort, their carefully laid plans crumbling around them like a failed investment strategy. The tone of the messages changed quickly from confusion to panic. "Vanessa, this isn't funny. Where are you? Pick up your phone. What are we supposed to do with the kids? You can't just disappear like this." Then came the anger. Olivia's messages turned nasty. "You selfish witch. We had to cancel our spa appointments because of you." Camille wasn't much better. "I can't believe you're this immature. Mom's birthday is ruined because of you. All our deposits at the Four Seasons are non-refundable." My Aunt Susan's messages made me wince. I'd never seen her use that kind of language before, especially not in a text. "You ungrateful little brat. You've ruined everything. These children were counting on you." Mom's messages started later in the day. "I'm so disappointed in you, Vanessa. I never thought you'd be this selfish after everything we've invested in your education." Dad, who rarely texted, had sent just one message: "Your mother is crying. I hope you're happy with yourself." The voicemails were worse. I could hear the anger, the disappointment, the accusations in their voices. Messages from extended family members I hadn't talked to in months suddenly appeared, all of them condemning my behavior. The family grapevine was apparently more efficient than Wall Street's fastest trading algorithms. "You've always been so reliable. How could you do this to your own family? Those poor children. You've ruined everything. I sat there in my peaceful suite, reading message after message, learning exactly what my family thought of me when I finally stopped being their convenient solution. The words they used, the names they called me, the assumptions they made about my character, it was like discovering a long-running fraud in a seemingly perfect company. Without responding to any of them, I packed my bags and headed to the airport. It was time to go home, but I wasn't the same Vanessa who had left a week ago. That Vanessa might have apologized, might have felt guilty, might have tried to make it up to everyone. But that Vanessa was gone, like a retired market strategy. I had just finished unpacking my resort wear when I heard the aggressive pounding on my front door. Before I could even reach it, I heard a key turning in the lock, the emergency key I'd given my mother years ago, just in case. They burst in like angry shareholders at a hostile takeover meeting, Mom leading the charge, Camille and Olivia flanking her sides, all of them red-faced and wild-eyed. The peaceful feeling I'd cultivated in Cayman evaporated instantly. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Olivia screamed, stepping forward in her designer heels. "You ruined everything. Everything." I stood my ground in my own penthouse foyer, watching them unleash their fury in my living room, the same living room where I'd babysat their children countless times, where I'd cancelled my own plans to accommodate their emergencies, where I'd always been the reliable one. Mike and John refused to stay with the kids, Camille spat out, referring to their husbands. They both suddenly had important business to take care of. So Olivia had to stay home with all 5 children while we went to Vail. She missed Mom's birthday because of you. The whole trip was ruined, Mom added, her voice rising above the hum of my climate control system. Nobody could enjoy themselves at the Four Seasons. All we did was talk about how you betrayed us, how you let everyone down. Your father couldn't even focus on his ski lessons, he was so upset. They continued their tirade, talking over each other, each one trying to outdo the others in expressing their disappointment and anger. The more they talked, the more absurd it all seemed, until something inside me broke, but not in the way they expected. I started laughing. The sound of laughter cut through their accusations like a perfectly timed market short. They stopped mid-sentence, staring at me as if I'd lost my mind. "What's so funny?" Mom demanded, her face flushing darker than her expensive highlights. What could possibly be funny about this situation? Mom's voice trembled with rage. I wiped tears of laughter from my eyes, feeling as confident as I did closing multi-million-dollar deals. "Don't you see how ridiculous this is? Do you really not understand how absurd you all sound right now?" "Absurd?" Camille sputtered. "What's absurd about you?" "Secretly planned this entire trip," I interrupted, my voice carrying the same authority I used in board meetings. "You decided, without asking me, that I would watch your children. You took my money, told me to take time off work, and then just assumed I would fall in line with your plans. And now that everything fell apart because of your assumptions, you're here calling me the villain?" "But you've always helped before," Mom said, her voice smaller now, confused, like a client realizing their strategy had fatal flaws. "You've never said no." "And that's exactly the problem," I cut in. "Because I always helped, you started taking advantage of me. You stopped seeing me as a daughter or a sister and started seeing me as free childcare. You stopped considering my feelings, my plans, my life. I became nothing more than an asset in your portfolio." "That's not true," Olivia protested, but her voice lacked conviction, like a weak market defense. "Really?" I raised an eyebrow, channeling my best negotiation stance. "Then why didn't you include me in the planning? Why didn't you ask me if I wanted to go to Vail?" Why did you just assume I'd be happy to stay behind with 5 children while everyone else celebrated? I watched their faces, hoping to see some recognition, some understanding of how they'd treated me. Instead, I saw their expressions harden like closing prices at the end of a bad trading day. "You're being selfish," Mom said, her voice cold. "You've ruined my birthday. You've hurt your sisters. You've disappointed the children. This isn't how I raised you." I felt the last thread of hope snap like a broken contract. "No, Mom, you're the ones being selfish. This whole situation is your fault, not mine." Mom drew herself up to her full height, her face like stone. "If that's how you feel, then perhaps I don't have a daughter named Vanessa anymore." "If that's what you want, Mom," I said quietly, with the same finality I used when terminating unsuccessful deals, "then so be it." It's been 6 weeks since that final confrontation in my penthouse, 6 weeks of silence broken only by the occasional notification when one of my family members makes another thinly veiled post on social media. "Some people only think about themselves," Mom wrote last week on her perfectly curated Instagram, followed by a dozen sympathetic comments from relatives and family friends who only know her version of the story. "Family should always come first," Olivia posted yesterday with a photo of her daughter in a designer baby outfit. "So blessed to have people in my life who understand what that really means." #blessed #family first. Camille's latest was a long paragraph about toxic people who destroy family bonds with their selfishness. She didn't tag me, of course, but everyone in our social circle knew who she was talking about. A few months ago, these posts would have devastated me like a market crash. I would have spent hours crafting responses in my head, losing sleep over their words, wondering if maybe they were right. But now, I just scroll past them, sometimes with a small smile at how predictable they've become, like market patterns in a bull run. I've changed my routine. Instead of spending my weekends on standby for emergency babysitting calls, I've joined an exclusive book club in Manhattan. The first meeting felt strange, sitting in a boutique cafe on a Saturday morning, knowing my phone wouldn't ring with a desperate plea from one of my sisters. Last week, I booked another vacation, a luxury cruise through the Mediterranean in the spring. I didn't have to check with anyone's schedule or make sure it wouldn't conflict with someone else's needs. I just saw a good deal and took it, like a smart investment opportunity. Sometimes, in quiet moments between deals, I think about my nieces and nephews. I miss them, but not the way they were used as weapons against me. I hope that someday, when they're older, they'll understand. Maybe they'll even recognize the same patterns in their own lives and choose differently. I still have the emergency key Mom used that last day. I should probably mail it back, but something stops me each time I think about it. Maybe part of me hopes that one day they'll understand, that they'll see how their actions and expectations were unfair, how they took advantage of my love for them, that they'll realize family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to meet everyone else's needs. But I'm not waiting for that day anymore. I'm not putting my life on hold, hoping for their approval or understanding. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first, and it feels right, like finally making the perfect investment in myself. Yesterday, I deleted the family group chat from my phone. I didn't make an announcement about it or try to explain myself. I just quietly removed myself from one more obligation, one more source of stress, like divesting from a toxic asset. Some might call this selfishness. My family certainly does. But I've learned that there's a difference between being selfish and having self-respect. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is step away from people who can't see your worth beyond what you can do for them, just like knowing when to walk away from a bad deal.